We're going to go ahead and get started. And today we're going to go over creating a lead magnet that converts. And the reason you want to create a lead magnet is because most of the time, if you put subscribe now at the bottom of your website or your blog, most of the time people aren't going to put their email in because they're not really getting anything in return. But the reality is, in today's day and age where people get a ton of emails, they're a lot more selective where and who they give their email to. So most of the time, what I recommend is now to create a lead magnet, something that will make the person or visitor that comes to your website or blog really want to connect with you, stay in touch with you, because they feel like there's something that you're offering that you may be able to help with. First, we're going to go over the fundamentals of really what is a lead magnet, uh, what to do, how does it work, and then I'm going to actually dive into an example of how to create a lead magnet for your practice. What is a lead magnet and why do you need one? It's pretty much typically a free, valuable resource that you can offer in exchange for a potential patient or client's email. So essentially, you're giving them value and you're getting an email as payment, so to speak, for that lead magnet, which eventually the idea is these lead magnets that you would nurture them, the emails you get, so that they can eventually convert into either a patient or a client. What does the lead magnet do? It's going to create trust. It's going to begin to build authority, especially because they don't know you. And maybe they either found you through Google or maybe they found you on Instagram and they're still trying to figure out, like, is this a trustworthy person? Is this someone that's going to give me the results that I need for whatever issue or pain point that I have? When people read your lead magnet, you want it to have your voice and you really want to connect with your audience because you really want them to feel like, hey, I can really connect with this person and I really like them and I want to work with them. From there, it becomes a warm lead because they're already interested, and now when you nurture them in the future, they'll be a little more interested in hearing what it is you have to say, especially if you build their trust through the lead magnet, through giving them valuable content. I'm going to interject here. This isn't in my presentation, but something that really drives me crazy is when I've opted into lead magnets just because I'm curious, what are they offering? What is this content that they're giving me? Is it going to help me? And I hate when I open it and it's just like a bunch of junk around, like just a bunch of design and like a few little points that I don't really feel brings me any value, because some of the stuff that I read in these lead magnets are things that I could have probably Googled and found the answer myself. And the point of the lead magnet is to really give them value on something that will help them. Keep that in mind when you're creating your lead magnet. Don't just be really basic with a few little things that might help, but the reality is the point of the lead magnet is to show that you know what you're talking about and that you truly have helped people. And even if it's not through, testimonials or case studies, it can really just be through you sharing what things might be able to help through making that connection of understanding the pain points that they're facing. And then through there, we have, this also increases conversions. When you have a lead magnet, eventually it says that it can, statistics will say that it can actually convert future patients or clients 3 to 4 times more, because like we discussed previously, if you've downloaded any of my content or watched any of my videos, you'll always hear me say typically that the studies show that about 7 to 8 touches in order for someone to convert. Now it's a little bit more. And I track my own leads and I track where people find me, and that is a video that I actually have in our sales and marketing community in our academy. And so in there I actually go over how I generate leads and how I track those. But as I track them, I notice that sometimes people are visiting my website multiple times or going to other aspects, like whether it's my podcast or another lead magnet they download. There are multiple touch points before that person decides to work with me. And so it's really cool to see when you track how people are finding you and what is working and maybe what's not working. And so because of that, when you create content that really speaks to your audience, it will eventually up your conversion, especially if you nurture those leads. So step-by-step creation on kind of creating a lead magnet, not so much the actual content you're going to put in, but just like the foundation of creating a lead magnet. One, so pick a hyper-specific pain point. And what that pretty much means is all of us have an extent knowledge in what we do. We have a lot of ideas and a lot of ways that we can help people. But it can become very overwhelming. And this is even something, because I have ADHD, that I have to tell myself is when I'm teaching, I want to go off on 1,000 tangents of all these other ideas that I can give you. One thing that I've learned and I feel resonates better with people is when you focus on one hyper specific topic, so one thing at a time, and then eventually they build on top of each other. Not meaning you're going to do thousands of freebies like I do, but I mean, I'm lying, I don't have 1,000 freebies, but that you're not doing multiple freebies like I do, but you have freebies that maybe you have one, two, three freebies that build on top of each other. When you're creating a freebie, you want to pick a hyper-specific pain point, something that would really help the person that you are working with. What are the common frustrations that they have? And what are also some quick wins that you can offer immediate relief? So like you touch the pain point, and then from there you go into how they can better it, or ways that they can improve whatever it is that they're struggling with. And so an example is, instead of putting something basic like healthy eating guide, which is very broad, even if you don't think it is very broad, because an eating guide can literally address multiple different things. Are we talking about an eating guide to reduce inflammation? Are we talking about an eating guide to become a vegetarian? Are we talking about an eating guide of eating clean? Are we talking about an eating guide on how to do keto? Like, these are just ideas of why saying something so broad as an eating guide can be very misleading, because you're not really touching the pain point. Versus you can try the Busy Professional's 5-minute meal plan for blood sugar control. Maybe someone's struggling with their blood sugar and they don't really have time to be planning out meals. If anything, I'm one of those people. I work a lot. And for me, it's easier to meal prep certain meals and just go get my lunch or my dinner out of the fridge that I have prepared previously. Creating content like that it's like, hey, you're a busy professional, here are 5-minute meal plans that can help control your blood sugar. Step 2 is choose a high value format. So a PDF or a guide or a checklist, those are easy to create, and I do recommend creating something that looks appealing to the eye. I'm going to show you 2 different types of lead magnets that I personally do, and I'll kind of explain why I do them differently. And then templates and trackers, great for engagement. I have different types of trackers, and I actually have a tracker for tracking any freebies that you do make. I make multiple freebies and I end up linking them and embedding them together. And so I have my own personal tracker that I will share, and I'll show you an example of my tracker. But you can create similar trackers, like if someone meal prepping and they're trying to track their, maybe they're working with you on a weight loss program and you have given them a very detailed meal plan, and so you're trying to track the meal plan. Or if you're someone that is working with women that are trying to control their hormonal imbalances and you've given them a guide on what they can do and what steps to take, then you can create a tracker to help them track that. Many ebooks, ideal for education, about 5 to 10 pages max. This is fine for in the healthcare space because most of the patients may not want to read a lot. I do make very lengthy ebooks. I think my biggest ebook and my most popular ebook is my brand personality ebook that really goes into creating a brand personality for your practice. And I spent a lot of time, but the way I created that ebook, which I will show you an example of, is I created it with a lot of like freestanding space with some text and also some design, just to kind of break it up. And me, someone that is dyslexic and ADHD, I cannot sit and read chunks of paragraphs at a time. So I really broke up the book, but really wanted to give a lot of value in this book, because I feel like one thing that really makes or breaks any practice is your branding. How do you speak to people? How do you connect? So in that book, I did create a very lengthy ebook, but with something like practices, it doesn't have to be crazy lengthy. You really want to make sure that if you read it, you'd feel like you got value from it, not that you had to go Google something, because you want people to have that feeling that you gave them that special touch, that expertise that they couldn't find on Google. So that is definitely something that you want to keep in mind when you're creating your ebook, is putting in your expertise through there and really making those connections. And then quizzes and assessments. I actually do have a quiz in that personality ebook, and I've had a few people take it. And so that's another way to generate additional interest and additional touch points, because I do have people that fill it out, and it also gives me an idea what kind of branding or what kind of design that person may like. And then lastly, this is a little more advanced, but exclusive webinars or video trainings can add more value. They also hear you speak. These could come more in play if you were trying to do some kind of like health coaching or coaching programs, because I do work with physicians and clinicians and even therapists that offer coaching programs and stuff like that. And not just programs, but some also offer like these master classes. And so a webinar or something like that could be helpful if you're doing something like that. All right, step 3, make it look polished. I cannot stress this enough. This is probably, if you've known me or begin to follow me, you will really realize that this is one of my biggest things that I like to share, is make things look polished. It doesn't mean you have to go hire a professional designer. It just means to make sure that your fonts match across the board, that your colors match across the board. Don't use one type of green here and then a different type of color here. Don't use one font here and a different font there, because in the end of the day, you're going to see that disconnect, and people are going to wonder, is that the brand? So if you see my content, I do have technically 2 brands that I market. I have my Care Identity, which is my branding agency, and then I have the Clinicians Atelier, which is more for the DIY spirit that is trying to learn to market and brand themselves. And so that is more an educational platform. And then you have my brand agency. So when you look across the board, I do have kind of an overlap between the 2 brands, so they feel somewhat cohesive, but they still have some slight differences. You want to use something like Canva. Canva, they do have a free version, but obviously the paid version gives you access to a lot more benefits. But something like Canva, if you're not a great designer or you don't have a creative eye, find a template that works for you, and then just change the colors and the fonts to match your brand. I definitely recommend using a template if you have to. Canva has a ton of templates available ready to use. Keep your fonts, like I said, and colors on brand. Add high quality images and white space for readability. So don't like jam pack it with a ton of content. Like try to make it very easy to read, and also don't try to avoid putting huge long text. If you do bullet points, that's helpful, but try not to put big blocks of paragraphs, because that will lose your audience. And then use bold headings and bullet points. Sometimes people skim through, and so they'll look for certain things that like resonate with them. So try to put certain certain headers throughout the book to really capture people's attention, or throughout your website also, and your landing page, which we will talk briefly about later, but I'm not going to go very in depth in that right now. But ultimately, you want to keep it simple and clean and avoid the clutter and mess, because when you put too much, it really does confuse the reader. So as you see, my presentation is pretty clean, to the point, bullet points, very easy to read, because one, I'm not going to be sitting here reading it. I just need quick reminders. But also, if you're looking at it, it's not overwhelming. It's very easy for you to follow the information. 4, add a strong call to action. So what happens is you may create this amazing guide or this super helpful PDF or ebook, and you have no follow-up. Like there's no, hey, book to schedule a meet and greet, book a consultation, book a appointment. And so from there, what you really want to do is you want to create a follow-up in a way. I've had people that have read my book and they've booked follow-up calls, because if you'll see in my book that I'll show you, I actually have my services at the end of my ebooks, and not so much my guides, but in my ebooks I do explain what it is I offer, so that way I can make these connections with my audience if they want to take a next step. Okay, so how do you pinpoint the perfect topic? So in order to pinpoint the perfect topic, you need to know your audience, and you also need to really understand who you're speaking to. If you're unsure, you can use my Ideal Patient and Niche Clarity workbook that is actually available in the Sales and Marketing Academy. So it is under our guides. It's actually the very first guide. It says start here. And this book will really help you nail down who it is you're speaking to, because when you know who you're targeting and who you want to work with, it's so much easier to create content for that audience than trying to help multiple people. Because even when I want to create content, I have to keep in mind, for example, therapists don't call their clients patients, and the doctors and the DPCs and the clinicians don't really call their patients clients. So sometimes you'll see where I'll put like patient/client in some of my books, because I'm trying to speak to my audience that although they offer they all have a private pay practice, they still tend to refer to who they serve differently. And so when you're trying to help too many people, it can become a little overwhelming to try to speak to too many audiences. So the more you can focus on who you're speaking to, the easier it will be to create content. You want to think of things like what keeps them up at night, what are they stressed about, and then you also want to maybe steal ideas from your own notes. Like, what are past things that you notice that you either address a lot with your patients or clients? Are there certain things that you feel like you're constantly saying? Is there a situation that you feel is like, wow, this could help somebody else? So look at that, run through your mind of your past patients and clients that you've worked with. And then also, what advice do you repeat most? Do you feel that when you have a visit or a session, there's certain things that you're constantly repeating to your audience? If so, go ahead and notate that, because that is one thing I learned personally, the longer that I've been in this space, is I would get asked the same kind of questions over and over, or I would get asked how to do certain things. Like, for example, for 2 years, I had noticed a trend that people wanted to work with me, but unfortunately, because they felt that my custom package was out of reach financially for them, then I decided to create my DIY offering along with my bare wireframes, because people always told me, I really like your work, but I just don't think that's in my budget right now. And so I created these other options to make having a polished professional website more attainable and more affordable. You want to keep those things in mind. What do you keep hearing? And create content or create things, or even add a program, or look at your services and tailor them. This is just like a little business note, but like tailor them to really fit the audience. And that's kind of what business is. Like, it's evolving. Like, you start with something and you get interest, but then you begin to realize a lot of people are having a similar pain point. And so then maybe you create something that addresses that pain point for that audience. Like I did, for example, like I said, with my DIY and my bare wireframes. Can you turn any of the things that you have thought of into a quick resource? And FAQs are super easy to really create content from, because you already know what you're constantly asked, and so you can create content based on that. How to create powerful hooks and grab attention. So there's an 80-20 rule, meaning 80% of the people will read your title and only 20% will download. So you want to use either numbers or urgency and clear benefits in your title. So for DPCs, you could say no insurance guide, 3 ways to save 50% on healthcare costs. So that already kind of piques your interest. Maybe you can shorten it, but this is just, again, examples. But here, to say 50% of health care costs, that would automatically pique up my interest. Obviously, you want to make sure it aligns with your statistics. But you could even pull from your own data if you're already an established practice, or you have noticed maybe you're leaving a fee-for-service practice and you're noticing a difference. You could say stuff like examples in that ebook about how someone rushed to the ER, but because they were able to see you the next day, or someone was rushed to an urgent care and they were able to see you the next day, you actually ended up saving that person X amount of dollars. I really love seeing those myself when I see DPCs post stuff like that, because it really educates me as someone that's not a doctor or clinician, how much insurance really does cost long-term versus just being a DPC patient, paying the monthly membership, and you actually get these discounts on your labs and on your medications. Like, there were times that I would go pick up my medication and it was like $10, $11. because I would use GoodRx instead of just paying whatever the retail price they're offering, or even when I had insurance at times. So those are really helpful ways to like really pique an interest of someone that's like, how would I save 50%? And it's an education tool. And then you're kind of explaining with case studies, if you can use case studies, client or your patients have given you permission to use their story as a case study without giving too much detail, but maybe just showing what the insurance tried charging them versus what it would have cost with DPC. Sometimes doctors and clinicians are able to get a hold of content like that. And those are things that you can put in this ebook of just like how you have, or this guide of how you've been able to save your patients thousands of dollars. You can even use a hook. I always saved my patient $1,800. And so from there, that will pique an interest of like, okay, how did they do that? And so that's when you go into really explaining the benefits. Now for therapists, there's one that says 5 simple scripts to set boundaries without guilt. I think there was a typo there. But essentially, I would turn this more into like 5 simple ways to set boundaries without guilt. Let's be honest, potentially some of us, or maybe most of us, have had issues setting boundaries, whether it's with family members, friends, or even with work. And so sometimes we do feel guilty. I would say this was something I personally had to overcome. And so when I read something like this, I would probably download that. I would probably download the 50% one, because these are things that would speak to me that has been a DPC and direct pay, private pay patient and client in the past. For a weight loss clinic, you can say 7 hidden reasons you're not losing weight and how to fix them. I've also struggled with my weight. I feel like I've struggled with most of this, except probably all this. So 7 hidden reasons why you're not losing weight. You know what? I feel like as I got older, hormones definitely do change, and that is something that could be potentially keeping people from losing weight. And so that would definitely perk the ears of someone that feels defeated, someone that feels like, man, I've tried so many things. I've been eating clean, I walk, I work out, and I just cannot shake the weight. And so something like that could really be helpful to somebody, as well as the functional medicine, the gut health checklist, 10 signs your digestion needs help. This could be great for someone that's noticing a lot of inflammation in their gut. Maybe they're having a lot of issues. So these are just some ideas, some hooks of just like the concepts of like you're giving them action, you're either giving them, either you're going to save them something, give them a tip, guide them through something so that they feel like they're getting value. And then here, how to get your lead magnet seen. So this is an example of my landing page. I get my 9-page guide. Again, I make it personal, so it feels like I wrote this, not somebody else. And then I give them a little blurb about what it's going to be, and then I give them some quick little checkpoints. This is what you're going to learn in this guide. So that way they can quickly decide, yes, I want to download that. And then from here, create a landing page. So we already went over that. And then promote it everywhere. I do have a kind of like a link tree. It's not link tree per se, it's one called Hop that's provided by Wix. And I immediately, the way I like to put things in order is I like to put like my free offerings at the top so that I can start building that trust. And then I put my paid offerings in order from like more affordable to my higher ticket offer towards the bottom. So that would look like my freebie, then my sales academy, my course, my bare wireframes, and then a call with me to do your custom project if you were looking to either revamp your website or do your website. I like this because if people aren't ready to really like go full blown, but they just want to like kind of get some ideas, they will download your lead magnet, start seeing that you actually provided value, and then they're going to want to take the next steps with time to make that appointment. You can share it on a website banner. I said this before, I absolutely detest pop-ups. The reason being is because when they pop up, especially on your cell phone, they're very hard to get rid of. Or sometimes you're in the middle of reading and something pops up and distracts you, and then it kind of makes you lose what you were. I prefer banners, so whether that's like at the top of your website, somewhere through the website, you can create it where they can download. And then add to an email signature, you can say something like, download my guide to XYZ, or download my ebook to XYZ. Create a pin post on Facebook groups. That's if you have a Facebook group you own or manage. If you're not the owner or manager, you probably won't be able to pin it, but you could share content in groups that allow it. Not every group allows it. And then I do have my Sales and Marketing Academy, which again, I focus, how do you tailor your approach? How do you sell? How do you connect with your ideal patients, along with how to kind of streamline things to make it a little bit easier for you to keep up with your marketing endeavors. I'm going to go over my book real quick. This obviously was my biggest book I ever had, and this was my more polished book. Again, yours doesn't have to be nearly this long, but I just really wanted to give a very in-depth sight of what branding is, because I feel like that is something my audience doesn't really understand, and I really wanted them to understand the importance of branding. If you notice, I have a lot of open space. I'm not going to call it white space because it's actually baby pink, but a lot of white space, some quotes here and there, and then I kind of do have a little more heavier pages with text, but they are in a format that is like bullet pointed, that are quick to read. So for example, you can read the font factor, and then it's the serif fonts, the modern approachable ones. Like even if they don't want to like read exactly what that is, they can scan through what speaks to them. Although I will say I am dyslexic and ADHD, so most of the ways my books are written are for people to read very quickly. If I can't read it quickly, then it doesn't work, because I know how my mind works, so I try to make my books pretty like to the point, quick headers to read and scan through, and a lot of bullet points. That's kind of how I design my stuff. You'll notice there's a lot of like little bullet points or like little paragraphs split apart. Also, I added flowers to this book. I don't typically add them, but if you know me on a personal level, I absolutely am obsessed with flowers. I used to be a painter. I used to paint flowers all the time. I used to own a mobile paint studio in Houston for 7 years and teach people, like kind of like those paint and sip studios. So I used to teach people how to paint. I did add this because it's part of my personality of who I am. I'm also don't like basic. If you know me, I'm very colorful. I love color, especially being an artist, not just a designer. And so this is my way of kind of showing who I am through my designs, because I want people to know, like, I'm not just super serious. Like, I also have this side of me that's very colorful. That is what I love about branding, because it really lets you kind of shine through your brand. Anyways, this is just an example of like my ebook, and how, if you read this ebook, this is also how I speak. I'm like very to the point, but I can be playful, but I also don't sugarcoat things. And that's just very true to who I am in general. And I don't like making people think one thing. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, this is super easy to do, but I will say it works. And it might take you some time to like create it, but once you create it, it's kind of like one and done. You don't have to like keep recreating it. And that's what I like about it. At the bottom, like I said, because my book is longer, I'm able to add these additional resources. So I did make like an additional resource section. And here I have my podcast with some of the episodes, and they can click to listen to the podcast. The other thing about this, it's a free resource. So it's my opportunity to continue building authority with people, and also helping them in the process by interviewing people that might be in their shoes. So that was the point of this podcast, was to help not just the community, but to also help them understand like how marketing and sales can look like for different practices, along with building authority. From here, I have that quiz. You can click on this, take a quiz. Then I go into my lower offer, which is my $27 a month, which is for founding members. I don't know at what point I'm going to raise the price, but right now it's $27 a month. And then from here, I kind of go into my next offering, which is my $297 course, and then my $997 wireframe with the course, and then I go into Build Your Brand with Alexa, which is like my biggest offering. The reason I offer kind of like in this structure is because I don't know if someone is trying to DIY, and I want them to know that's an option. I don't know if someone's looking kind of like for a template. So I have that option. And lastly, I'm like, okay, if you don't want to do this yourself, I got you, I'll do it. That is how I structured mine. It works for me. You just have your, a picture with a call to action, like a picture with you talking about like booking your next appointment. So let me see, this one is like kind of talking about slightly my expertise. So Build Your Brand with Alexa, so it'd be like book a call with your name. And then I've been for over 15 years, I've been crafting custom brands. So I tell a very small blurb, very to the point, with a focus of DPC, direct patient care, and private pay models, because that's my niche. So I want to be like, this is who I work with. The year I started working with DPCs back in 2016, but I've been branding since 2009. And then I put, I've designed more than 150 sites and brands for entrepreneurs, with over 50% of those specifically for private practice. So I'm honest, I've worked with 50, probably 60 at this point, private practices, 150 websites. So just kind of saying like, this is something I specialize in. And then what is my passion? Igniting your entrepreneurial spirit and bringing your vision to life. So mine's very exciting because I think that starting a business is super exciting and it's amazing. And I just really love helping people do it. And so that is my passion. Yours might look different than that, how you write yours. And then I put schedule a free call and they can click there and book a call from this book. So all this was created in Canva. For my ebooks, I have 3 ebooks. I haven't loaded the font pairing one yet because I just launched it. But then I have like these that I use more for social media. And these take me, I do have a time. These take me like about sometimes 15 minutes, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, just depending how long the guide is. And then these longer books, the books did take me much longer. One took me 8 hours, 7.5 hours, and 15 hours. The 89-page book took me 15 hours to design. And the other ones, though, these smaller guides that I use in Google Docs, which is what I wanted to show you. So these are typically like what I call my guides. They're just Google Docs that I copy and paste into, so I'm not spending a lot of time in design. What takes so long is the design time to create the books versus me just copying and pasting content in here and tweaking it. So that's how I'm able to create content in like 30 minutes, 15 minutes sometimes. These longer ones are normally like even the master classes take me sometimes 3 hours. It takes me 2 hours to prepare for them and like an hour to teach them. So the reason I keep track of all this, because it goes into my tracking video that I talked about, is because I want to know which lead magnets are producing me money and which ones people are drawn to. And because of that, I'm able to see like what I should like focus on more. And also because I just like to know. So I always tell people, you're spending time or you're spending money. So you're going to spend money to do it or you're going to spend your time to do it, but it also has some kind of monetary attachment to it because your time is valuable. So that is the reason I created this tracker. So I will provide this tracker if you plan to do multiple one day. Again, some people may not even do this because, let's be honest, I'm a little bit, I feel like an overachiever at times, but you may not want to do a bunch. I just really like making freebies. I actually enjoy it. So that's why I've made so many, and I try to link them, intertwine them. So that's why I created this. I call it the spider web. So one leads to another, because the idea is I'm trying to create a lot of content for the academy. And so some say public, some say academy only. So I'm starting to shift more into academy only. And I will still keep doing the master classes. But ultimately, the idea is to create the community for the academy. Here, I created this guide for this class. So what to ask your custom GPT. If you haven't already watched that video is available. So you can learn how to make your custom GPT in there. And the reason this is important is because the more you talk with your personalized GPT, the more it learns you, the more it sounds like you, and the more it really understands who you're trying to help. I've probably chatted with my GPT over 75 times. And so it's funny because even when I created this guide, it sounded like the stuff I ask it. And so it was just kind of funny. I'm going to add one other thing to this guide before I share it. This is kind of like a template I created. So I need a high converting lead magnet idea for my blank. So whether it's your DPC, therapy, functional medicine, whatever practice you have, that attracts your ideal patient, which could be a busy mom, entrepreneur, people with chronic illness, menopause, whatever your focus is. The freebie should solve a specific problem they struggle with and provide a quick win. Please include the following. Then you're going to put the content in. And then this is what an example of what it looks like for a therapist. And then it literally within seconds generated this. Now, I probably should have spent a little more time like reviewing it, but I didn't like love the content it came up with on this one. But this one, I kind of spent a little more time on the DPC one. And so this one is what it sounded like for DPC. I need a high converting lead magnet idea for a direct primary care practice that attracts women struggling with menopause symptoms. The freebie should solve a specific problem they struggle with, such as fatigue, weight gain, mood swings, or brain fog, and provide a quick win. Please provide the following, a compelling, quick, worthy title that immediately grabs attention. That's actually stuff I tell it when I'm trying to get like really good titles, I'll tell it like, give me a click worthy, or I'll tell it, give me clickbait, because I'm trying to get like an attention grabber. And those are some of the terms I use. So it was funny to see that it said click worthy, because that's what I say a lot. And then a structured outline breaking down the key sections, and then persuasive call to action. And then this is what is spit out for this. I kind of liked the title. It said the Menopause Relief Blueprint, 5 natural ways to regain energy, balance hormones, and feel like yourself again. So here you're kind of telling them like, regain energy. They're probably feeling exhausted. Their hormones feel all over the place. And then you want to feel like yourself again, because people typically hate like when you're going through these changes in life. And it's not even just menopause, but you know, when you go through changes in life, sometimes you don't feel like yourself. And so here you're kind of speaking to those pain points. And then it kind of goes into what the outline could look like. And what I always do is I kind of take it section by section when I'm writing these ebooks, these guides, because I noticed with ChatGPT, if you like put everything in all at once, it's not as tailored. And like that's why it takes sometimes 30 minutes to an hour to write the book, because I probably spend more time really like tweaking it to what I want, but it's still a lot faster than me trying to write from a blank page, just staring at it for hours, because I can kind of come up with what I want, but I don't have enough content. And so typically it helps me kind of generate more content, and then I can kind of decide, oh, is this what I want? I'll jump into the GPT real quick just to show you. This is an example of how I talk to my GPT personally. This is an example of today's presentation. So if you notice, this is the very beginning of the chat. I don't just tell it one little thing and then I expect it to generate content. I think there's this misconception with the GPT that people are just relying on the GPT to make content. That is not the proper way to use the ChatGPT. It's supposed to be a tool. So it's supposed to aid you, but it's not supposed to like just generate everything for you. Like if not, you're not really adding your expertise and value to it. So what I typically do is I give it how my process is and what I do, and then it kind of cleans it up for me. So here I go. I put, I'm doing a presentation, so I'm telling you what I'm doing on creating a freebie lead magnet. The focus should be examples of for my audience to create their own. My audience are DPC therapists and clinicians in the private pay space. I do love ChatGPT because I make so many spelling errors and it always knows what I'm trying to say. So thank God. I already created a tracker of my lead magnets, and then I said my process, and now I'm telling you my process. Pick a hyper-specific pain point my audience may be dealing with, create a PDF ideally spend time to design it through Canva, because that was important to me to talk about like how you need to create a professional looking product, and then make sure it's on brand. And then I told it, give a CTA, which is the call to action, at the end of the lead magnet on how they can take next steps, set up a landing page to capture the leads, use automations to sync the leads with your marketing campaign. This should be only mentioned. I have created a separate explainer video on how to do this in the Sales Academy. So my GPT knows about my Sales Academy. And I want to focus more on creating a downloadable lead magnet, focusing on title hooks, what kind of content and how to pinpoint the topics you want to use and so forth. And so then from there, it helps me kind of generate the content. And so then I kind of go through it, and there's certain things like I don't like. So there might be like a moment I'm going through, I go, is there another term for design it professionally? It's too long and make it short. Some might not be able to hire a professional, so I want them to have tips on how to make it look professional. So this is me telling it about my audience that the GPT is not going to know. If I were just to copy and paste what it said, that wouldn't align with what I'm doing, because most of the people that I am teaching are trying to DIY. So it wouldn't make sense for me to say design it professionally, because that might make some people think they need to hire a designer, and it's also too long. So like that's how I talk to it, and then it kind of gave me like make it look more polished, which I liked. And then I'll say took long title, make it shorter, getting the lead magnet in front of the right people. So like I'll train it, and I said I want you to teach us to instruct you how to give me related fill-in prompts to the clinician. So like you can see how you like will keep tweaking it. Actually, a lot of the stuff I didn't even use, but like I'll just take certain key points that I feel apply, and I'll kind of go through that. And so this is just one way how I personally will train the GPT. There's actually other ones that I have that are like a lot more in depth. There's just a lot of ways how you can use the GPT to like save you a lot of time when you learn to create your own. So I really recommend kind of learning to make your own. You don't have to. You could just use the general GPT is just not going to learn your voice because it's not custom to you. Just an example of my actual live landing page, and you can create these on your website. Typically, landing pages only have your logo. It's not going to have the same. The reason being is because if you add additional links and they don't download the freebie, if you have like all this extra stuff, so you normally just want it to be your logo and the call to action. Because if you have like all your other links at the top, then they might get distracted and not fill it out. So the idea is to really like force them, like you're kind of funneling them to do it. Like I said, the Sales and Marketing Academy, if you haven't joined, you can download these guides and these additional resources that I have already uploaded. And that's it.